Hello everybody and welcome back. It has been a while. So the latter half of 2023 was not a particularly fruitful time booktube wise, but back in October I think I had said that I wanted to get back on track making videos, that everything was fine, it was just really busy. And unfortunately, in November and December, I had a really tough time. So unlike all of the other breaks that I have taken, it was not for really fun things. Unfortunately, there were some health things and a lot of really stressful life events, and it was just a really tough time. But thankfully, all of that has kind of cleared up. And we are headed into the new year. I'm actually recording this on January 1st, so we are right in the new year. And hopefully that will mean more time to get back to making regular booktube videos. I do really miss putting them out. I've still had a great time on Discord keeping up with, a lot of the people who do tend to consistently watch my videos, and I have been very grateful for their presence during this time. But I also haven't been super active there just because it's been a really, like I said, a really hard time. Life has been a little bit difficult over the last couple of months. But what I wanted to do in today's video was just give like a little bit of a reading wrap up for 2023 and then talk about some of my reading goals for 2024. My major goal over the next, my very, very short-term goal over the next couple of weeks is to get out all of those regular end of the year videos. So I know most people already have them done, but because I wasn't given a lot of reading updates in the second half of the year, I feel like there's a lot to talk about that happened in 2023. So I don't want to skip those videos. Like I don't want to skip the 5-star videos and the top 10 videos and the most surprising, the most disappointing. All of those videos I think will be a lot of new stuff because I haven't really made a lot of content surrounding the latter half of last year. So I am hopeful that I'll be able to get that out. We are also doing some renovations in our house, changing some of the rooms. So for the foreseeable future, I'll also probably be recording in front of this tiny little bookshelf in my room. So, it's just going to be like that for the next little while. The angle, everything might be a little bit odd, but I fussed over it for so long today and then finally said, okay, whatever it is, it is. I just have to get in front of the camera and talk, or else these videos will never be made. So let's just recap my goals for last year and then we'll talk a little bit about the goals that I have for this year. So usually I set 5 reading goals, and it's because I like the way that it looks in my reading planner. So I just like making the page like this. So usually I try to think of 5 reading goals that I have, and I will plan them out and then try to stick with them for the year. So last year, my 5 goals were to read 72 books. So I did meet that goal. I actually read 103 books in 2023. So 100 books for the first time, and there were 3 rereads that I read in 2023. One goal was to read 12 works of nonfiction, and I got to half of that. So I was able to read 6 works of nonfiction. My goal is usually to make one of the books I read each month a work of nonfiction, and this year it just worked out to be every 2 months. And I think one of the reasons for that is that when I first started listening to audiobooks, I only listened to nonfiction on audio because I didn't really like listening to fantasy, which is primarily what I read on audio. I found it not as engaging, but as I have gotten more used to audiobooks, there are certain series, certain authors, certain narrators that I really like on audio, and so I have been reading or listening to more fantasy. And so since my audio tastes have broadened, it means that that kind of takes up a little bit of that nonfiction time. But 6 books for the year is not bad. I'm still going to hope for more next year. If we can get it up to 10 or even 12, that would be great. But reading nonfiction will be a continuous goal of mine, even if it's not a formal goal in next year's reading goals. Or this year's, I guess, since we're now officially in 2024. The third goal was to read 50 books from my physical TBR. I have talked about the fact that I have so many books that I haven't read. Many of them accumulated in the last couple of years because I finished residency and started working and was like, you deserve to buy all the books. And I took that a little bit too literally. So I have accumulated books far more quickly than I can read them. And I am now trying to work through them without purchasing enough to kind of take their place. So I'm starting to chip away at that physical TBR. And I actually didn't do too poorly. My goal had been to read 50 from my physical TBR this year, meaning books that I owned prior to 2023 starting. So new books that I bought in 2023 did not count for this list. And I read 46 out of 50. So not bad. I definitely didn't buy 46 books in 2023. So I think I've been able to kind of overall, the number has gone down of books that I need to read, and I'm pleased with that. But that will definitely be an ongoing goal. And then number 4 was to finish 8 ongoing series, and I did not do that. I finished 4, so I only made it 50% of the way on that goal. And I'm a little bit more upset with that one than I am for the nonfiction one, just because I really should be closing out some of these series. I really do want to get through the series on my list. One good thing I will say is that I started a bunch of series in 2023, but I finished almost all of them. So I didn't leave very many new series open. So again, when I go to do my 2024 reading journal, I still will probably have like equal or fewer series to open in 2024 than I had in 2023, because I just did a much better job of starting and finishing things in 2023 than I had in previous years. So that's one good thing. Even if I didn't really meet my, finishing off series goal, I at least didn't make things worse for myself, which is nice. And then my last goal had been to read 6 classics. So my goal for classics was one every 2 months, because classics are often dense. A lot of them are long. Not all of them. I've read some short ones, but a lot of them are long. A lot of them are dense. And I almost made this one. So I got 4 out of 6. I read 4 classics this year. If I can remember off the top of my head, I'm wondering. I read Far from the Madding Crowd and Jude the Obscure by Tom Hardy. I reread Jane Eyre, but I don't think I counted that one for the classics. I don't remember if I counted that for it or not. And I don't remember the other ones that I read, but regardless, I have a bunch of classics that are on my shelf that I need to read. So that kind of kills 2 goals with 1 stone, because I get to, read a classic and then also knock something off my physical TBR. But those were my goals for 2023. Did not crush them, but also didn't do too poorly. So I'm pleased with most of my progress. 2023 was a busy year. It was at the tail end a bit of a tough year. I started writing again in 2023, and I wrote a fair bit, like almost 200,000 words, I think, over the course of the year, which is, a fairly big portion. So I'm pleased overall with everything that I was able to accomplish. And at the end of the day, this is all a hobby. It's supposed to make you feel good. So it still does that, and I am pleased with that. For 2024, so my new crop of goals, I tried to think of some things that maybe when I look back on the last year might have been lacking, or something that I really want to do. I always set a Goodreads goal. So one is always a reading goal. And I'm trying to bring my reading goal down this year. So I think I'm trying to decide if I'm going to use 72 again as my goal, because I did exceed that by a fair amount this year. But last year I was mostly reading and then writing, and I didn't do a lot of recording. If I'm going to be trying to read and write and record, the time is going to have to come from somewhere. And so I'm assuming I'm just going to be able to read fewer books. Now, I don't know if I should still keep that at 72, or if maybe I should go a little lower at 60 or something like that. Focus on maybe getting some of those bigger books off the TBR. I'm not sure, but my reading numbers goal, I'll decide once I write it in the journal, will either be 60 books for the year or 72 books for the year, and we'll see how that goes. In terms of what I read, I read fairly diversely in terms of author voices and also genre, all of those things. But someone in my regular non-Booktube life had asked me for recommendations for books by First Nations authors or Indigenous authors from Canada. And I didn't have a lot of great recommendations. I read a couple of books in university and really liked them, but I have not made a point to seek out those authors. And I really don't like it when someone asks me for a recommendation and I can't give it. And I like being able to read books, whether they're fantasy or nonfiction or literary fiction or whatever the genre is, from different perspectives, because I think different people bring different things to the books that they write, which is why I think kind of naturally my books tend to be a little diverse, is because I don't want to be reading the same thing all the time. And so in the past, I have not made it a particular point to say I am going to specifically pick up this sort of book or read from this specific type of author, but I do want to add more books by Indigenous Canadian authors to my TBR. So that is one thing that I will be trying to consciously seek out in 2024. So if you have any recommendations, specifically fantasy, because that is my favorite, but any recommendations at all, then I would greatly appreciate those, because then I can start putting together kind of a priority TBR for 2024 as well. Like I said, number 3, I'm still going to have reading off my physical TBR on my goals list. I think this is also going to depend on like what my reading goal is for the year, because if my reading goal is 60 books for the year, I'm probably not going to use 50 as my reading from my physical TBR, because I do read a lot of library books. I do pick up books on Kindle. I do pick up books on Audible. I do buy new releases sometimes if they sound really good. So I try to aim for about like half of the books that I read to be from my physical TBR. So I'm not sure what the exact number will be, but what I really want to do is complete the Read Your Bookshelf challenge this year, which is put together by a booktuber whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will link the video below. So I was participating in this with my friends last year, and then just kind of fell off at the end of the year because everything kind of fell off at the end of the year. But I'm hopeful that I'll be able to complete that challenge this year. So that's probably what I'm going to use as my formal physical TBR goal, is just to complete that challenge. And hopefully I'll be able to make my way through that. And my last goal for this year is actually to do more rereads. Before I started Booktube, I used to be a big rereader. I used to reread a lot of my favorites, and over the last couple of years, I think because when you're on Booktube, there's always this, whether it's intentional or not, there is this kind of feeling that you need to be reading more things and newer things and different things, so that what you talk about can be unique and it can stand out from what other people are talking about. And for me, sometimes that means reading some backlisted authors, some authors that maybe don't get as much airtime on Booktube, things that I can talk about where I don't feel like I'm being repetitive. I know lots of people are happy to watch like the 45th video on Brandon Sanderson, or the like 100th video on The Lord of the Rings. I like doing that too. Like I like watching those kinds of videos because those are the books that I know I love. But sometimes I put this pressure on myself to be like, you need to do something different. You can't stagnate. It needs to be something that is unique. But I really love rereading books, and I think that I could use a little bit of that comfort in 2024. So I am going to make it a formal goal to try to push myself to reread some of those old favorites. Plus, some series like the Inheritance series by Christopher Paolini just got a new edition. So it'd be a great time to read the 4 books in the series before I go on and then read the new release. So it'll be fun to go back, I think, and do some of those things. Like The Lord of the Rings just got a new set of audiobooks over the last couple of years, narrated by Andy Serkis. That sounds like it would be a great time to pick up. So it's a good time for rereading old favorites, I think. And I might try to tie that into the channel, maybe make some reading vlogs, go back and talk about the books that I loved and why I loved them, and go through all of those things. But those are the main goals for 2024. I am really looking forward to it. I would love to know if any of you put together goals. What kinds of reading goals are you thinking about this year? What are you hoping to pick up? What are you going to be reading? I am really, really glad to be back. I am hopeful that I can make these videos more consistent, because I always have fun editing them and posting them. And I wish you all a very good reading year in 2024. And I'll see you with another video soon. Bye.